Initially, actually, my idea was, startups are hard. I don't know if I want to really do a startup on this. I wonder, can I get someone at Amazon or Google or Microsoft to sort of pony up the cash to do this at one of the big clouds? And those conversations went okay, but it didn't seem like they were going anywhere interesting. So instead, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna raise money for this. And so I spent some time, started, raising money. So eventually raised like 3.5 million to do this. And in this time, all I had was 800 lines of Python and 1,000 lines of Elm. That was the entire product. I'm Paul Biggar. I'm founder and CEO of darklang.com.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Labhart, and today how Paul Biggar built the one-stop shop to remove the complexities from building modern-day apps. All this and more on Code Story. Paul Biggar was born in Dublin, Ireland, living there most of his life. When he was young, his dad had a couple of computers where Paul could program in BASIC and Logo. In addition to these early introductions, he was into building his own machines and tweaking their hardware settings to get the most optimal performance out of them. He completed his CS undergrad along with his PhD before heading off to Silicon Valley to do the tech startup thing. He currently lives in New York. And during the pandemic, his primary activity outside of tech and entrepreneurship is taking walks with friends. In a past venture, he was the founder of CircleCI, the very popular continuous integration tool for engineering teams. Building on his successes here, he started to look at how difficult it was to deploy code, to do infrastructure, to write code, how teams interact, and many other friction points for the SDLC. He set out to remove the complexities of how we build apps today. This is the creation story of Dark.
So Dark is a programming language combined with an editor, combined with infrastructure. So you use our hosted platform, you write code in our app in the browser, and you write in our proprietary language. Okay, so if I've explained it like that, it sounds terrible. It's like, why would anyone want to do this? So let me go a little bit to the backstory and why. What Dark is intended to be is a way of creating backend services that don't have all of the complexity of how we build apps today. So it started from this idea of looking at how complicated it was to deploy code, to do infrastructure, to write code, to and much more than that. How teams interact, how maintenance on software teams works, even how continuous delivery is a key part of it. And so it basically made a giant list of all of the problems. There's this phrase, accidental complexity. So you can divide complexity into essential complexity, which is a core part of what you're trying to do for your business or whatever, and then accidental complexity is all the bullshit that you have to deal with along the way. Made this huge list and tried to classify everything into, is it accidental complexity or is it essential complexity? And then basically invented a solution to writing backend software or cloud software that didn't have any of that complexity. And that's what led me to this sort of integrated, clearly we're hosting the infrastructure for you. That's one large thing off your mind. But how do you get to the deployment time down to zero time at all? That's the fastest thing you can deploy code. So how do you do that? And we designed a language and an editor around sort of safely creating code that's sort of in production, but in a safe way. And that's how we ended up with all the three things tied together.
Tell me about the MVP. I guess we could call it that. I don't know what you'd call it when you're building a language, building a product like this, which is really interesting. But tell me about that MVP, how long it took to build, and what sort of tools you used to bring it to life.
It took a while. So I initially came up with the idea, or let's say decided that I was going to solve this in late 2016. And the idea had sort of been brewing in my head for several years. And the idea that I had, the thought that I had for how to solve this was a language that was like a visual language with sort of a graph and sort of nodes and edges in that graph. And so I built a prototype of a blog, and the blog fit, basically in one like small image. I built a prototype in Python on the back end and Elm on the front end, and used that to sort of demo it. And it worked, and it actually did what it was supposed to do. Initially, actually, my idea was, startups are hard. I don't know if I want to really do a startup on this. I wonder, can I get someone at Amazon or Google or Microsoft to sort of like, pony up the cash to do this at one of the big clouds? And those conversations went okay, but it didn't seem like they were going anywhere interesting. So instead, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna raise money for this. And so I spent some time, started raising money. So eventually we raised like $3.5 million to do this. And in this time, all I had was 800 lines of Python and 1,000 lines of Elm. That was the entire product. And then it came time to actually start to build it. It was August 2017 by the time we really started to build the thing. Spent a couple of months just like trying to create this like good way of creating software. And we had a couple of like different challenges. It's like, all right, suppose that someone's writing a Caesar cipher, which is like the way that children like do encryption. You switch the letter A for M, that sort of thing. So, all right, can we give someone, a question, and, can a user come in, we give them a question, and then they write the code to solve this if we like give them the algorithm? It wasn't immediately obvious that we needed to give them the algorithm, but it turns out that no one knows how to do modular arithmetic. So we were like way off in our expectations of what code people would know how to do. But we gave people the algorithm. It was a real challenge. And just like this idea of writing nodes and edges, it was just like really complicated for people, even though we had like visual programming in there and we showed people the intermediate outputs of their computation so far. And it just wasn't really working. And we tried a bunch of different ways of sort of representing this. We started getting people to write FizzBuzz in it. So FizzBuzz is this like interview challenge that everyone got asked to do in like the 2000s. And it's basically, list out 100 numbers, and if they're divisible by 3, write fizz. If they're divisible by 5, write buzz. If they're divisible by 3 and 5, write FizzBuzz. And otherwise, write the number. So there's a calculation in there that's basically, if I modulo 3 equals 0, and very simple arithmetic. But in our sort of nodes and edges language, just that was a really difficult challenge to get someone to like write that and to build it out, between sort of infix notation and like people being new to this. So people eventually sometimes got it done, and the feedback was just terrible. It's just like, we cannot write like this. And so we decided to ditch that concept and instead tried to design the core ideas that we had behind Dark and put them into something that looked a little bit more like traditional code, that looked like the sort of like textual code. And so that was the next few months, and it was trying to sort of like take these concepts. So one of the concepts was we didn't want a parser. We believe that parsers cause syntax errors. And so can you write code in such a way that you cannot have a parser, or that you don't need a parser? And so we have a way to do that. It's called a structured editor. And we came up with a way basically of the structured editor feeling a lot more like writing code. You're writing roughly the same language, but it actually looks a lot more like code. And with that, we were able to get people to write some code. We were able to write programs that did things. And so that was sort of the first point that we realized, okay, we've got our real MVP now.
With any MVP, you've got to make certain decisions and trade-offs about, I'm going to do things one way, and it's going to hurt in the short term, but it's going to be better because we're going to get it done faster, or technical debt or things like that. So you touched on a few of them, but dive into them a little more. What sort of decisions and trade-offs did you have to make in the short term, and how did you cope with them?
There was always the technical debt decision. The initial version was written in Python. And we realized that Python was not a good language for the type of like massive experimenting that we were going to do. And so we switched to this language called OCaml, which is a statically typed functional language. And statically typed functional languages are amazing for writing programming languages. The static typing, where a compiler is sort of like telling you when you get code wrong, really allowed a huge amount of refactoring, which is what we needed to do a lot in the early days. We refactored a huge amount. We would write something, we'd realize it was all wrong. We'd completely change a lot of implementations, and so that was like one of the major ways that we handled that sort of complexity, but by having a statically typed functional language. Other things we did is that we just assumed that we were going to pile on the technical debt, at least until MVP. And we thought until product market fit, but that's another story for later. But we just took on a lot of debt, and some of it is still being paid off.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy, pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted vCISOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's VANTA.com/codestory. Well, then, so you've got your MVP, right? And you start to progress the product. How did you go about that process of progressing and maturing the product? And then how did you go about building your roadmap and figuring out, okay, this is the next most important thing to build or address with Darklang?
At the start, we had a couple of example applications that we wanted to build. One is called like the real world app, but it's basically a Medium clone. And we were able to write a Medium clone, and so it's like, okay, this actually works now, even though it was horrendous, but it sort of worked. Our next goal was we need to support somebody who's not us being able to build an application here. And we reached around for startups that wanted to do it, but it was a very big risk. We didn't really know how to manage that risk, and eventually came up with the idea that we would pay someone to do this. And we posted, not exactly a job ad, but we said, we will pay you $3,000 a month to write your application in Dark. And the idea was, you're a startup, you're already writing your application in something, perhaps you're bootstrapped, and $3,000 would help you out during the bootstrapping phase. That actually got us about 30 applications, and maybe 2 of them were like fairly appropriate. And so we went with this guy Daniel, and he built this SaaS app for managing janitorial supplies that he had an existing customer base in an adjacent product, and it just like connected to that. And so he came into our office every day, and there were weeks at a time where he couldn't actually code in it because we had to redo some fundamental part of like how something scaled or re-architect a key part of things. But for the most part, it was just him coming to the office, and we worked on the thing, and whenever he had problems, we worked to solve them.
So I'd like to switch to team. How do you go about building a team? What do you look for in these people to indicate that they're the right people to join you and the winning horses to join you?
Honestly, I'm not sure that there's any particular indicators that you can use. I think a lot of the indicators that we've traditionally used as an industry have been really bad. Like, did they go to an elite school or something like that? I don't think that they're very good. For the most part, we want to see can people code, and can we spend time with them? And I think those are the most important things. The way we tend to look for that. We have an interesting interview process, actually. The first interview is basically getting a list of everything that they say they know how to do. So, here's the areas that we care about. We care about, being able to do front end. We care about being able to do back end. We care about compilers. We care about functional languages. Care about distributed systems. And you're not expected to know all those things like that. That would be ludicrous. We just want a list, in the area of front end. Are you good? Are you bad? Is this your area of expertise? Is it not? And we go through the list of 6 techs, and often people have one that they're really the expert in. And so what we're looking for is the thing that this person is good at. Is that what our team needs, and are they good at it in a way that the team needs? And then we do a 1-day on-site interview, which we pay people for. We don't believe in wasting people's time, so we have a standard $500 stipend that we pay to you to do the on-site. Through the course of that, it's making sure do you work well with the team. The sort of thing that comes up is like, oh, this person was actually like really condescending to the female engineers. That's a no. That's the sort of thing that like we've found, but like we haven't got any like silver bullets for how we hire people, I think.
Did you ever have anybody abusing the stipend, or was it not known to them before they accepted the interview?
We never had anyone abusing it at all. I think for people who are going for the kind of jobs that we're doing, there's it takes a lot to have the skills to be able to do that, and I don't think that the $500 is like a financially meaningful thing for anyone, and of course we also pay for them to fly out and put up their hotel and all that sort of thing on top of the $500. But I think it's mostly a token to indicate we are not here to waste your time.
This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. So I usually ask about scalability. So I'm curious how, where you'll take this question. But did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or are you kind of fighting this as you grow?
We're fighting it as we grow. We've definitely made some choices where it might have been better to sort of plan the scalability in advance. So for example, we used some product that Google had. We used Google Cloud. We use like one of their products that's like vaguely Docker on kind of one machine, and that's the sort of thing where we might have been better to like spend a day learning Kubernetes, because eventually we went to Kubernetes and then we had to do like a migration, and so there was a bunch of time wasted there. But for the most part, we're believers in we actually don't know what problems we're going to have. We don't know how to solve them in advance. So, just do the thing that works today, and we can figure it out later.
So as you step out on the balcony and you look across all you've built with Dark, what are you most proud of?
When we started Dark, and in particular, I'm pitching all these people about the technical and product vision, and most of them say that isn't possible. Both technologists, really good engineers, and investors. I'm telling them we're going to build this technology where you deploy in 0 seconds. They're like, nope, that cannot work. People will not be able to code like that. It just isn't possible to build. And so, even though today we're pre-product market fit, some of the things that people said are not possible, those were our first proof points. We proved to ourselves that these are possible. And I think that was a thing that just a lot of people thought was not going to happen.
So let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
Oh man, we've made plenty of mistakes all over the place. We're 4 years in and we haven't got product market fit. I guess that's probably the major situation. And I don't know if is it a mistake? I mean, lots of mistakes contributed to this, but we definitely bit off a lot more than we could chew. And we did that intentionally. We just thought that it would be easier to sort of like get through it. So yeah, the building an editor, building a programming language, building infrastructure, all at the same time is quite a lot. I'm struggling to define it as a mistake, but it's definitely the largest challenge that we had and the one that so far has not been overcome.
Sure. No, that makes sense. You're tackling a huge problem. It wasn't where you were taking a bite out of the elephant one at a time, or one bite at a time. You were eating the elephant one bite at a time. You were just trying to eat it all at once.
Yeah, and we knew that. I think that the speculation I had at the start was the way that the industry works is that everyone makes an incremental solution. The problem is actually the incremental solution. It's that we just keep adding technologies to the amount of things that people need to know. And that the only way to be able to actually remove complexity is to remove technologies, remove products, remove steps from the whole thing. And to do that, we need to build all of it. We expected that by building all of it, we don't have to integrate with anything else. So it's not like, if you're building VS Code, right, your popular editor, you have to have support for every language that's out there, and you also have to have support for a ton of editing modes, and all of those intersect, and it's complicated. We're like, okay, well, we only need one editor to work for one language to deploy to one thing. There's not 100,000 tools or 100,000 different combinations of tools that we need to deal with. There's just one. And that really, really did help, but not nearly as much as we thought.
So what does the future look like for the product and for your team?
So hopefully the future looks like product market fit. The team at the moment is down to just me. We have still quite a bit of money. So really what I'm working on at the moment is figuring out the best way to sort of leverage that to get our way to product market fit. I think we know what that needs to look like, but there's a lot of, we built up a large amount of technical debt, and a bunch of it turned out was in our way of getting to product market fit. So there's the sort of fixing a good amount of technical debt, and then there's adding the features, primarily a package manager, that we need to get to product market fit. I think that those are the main thing, but every part of it has to be, every part of Dark at the moment is in maybe an alpha state, and so there's also a large amount of trying to figure out an ordering so that is it okay that this particular thing is in an alpha state, or does the fact that it's in an alpha state actually prevent people from getting into the product or believing that the product is good? Those are the kind of trade-offs that I'm dealing with, apart from the actual product features required to get to product market fit.
So we talked about a mistake, maybe a little bit different spin. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you do differently, or where would you consider taking a different approach?
I think we'd hire a little bit more slowly. We had the company at 10 people in July, or a little before July last year. And I think we overhired and overspent. I think that we could have gotten much further with a smaller team, and sort of like the overhead of having a team, became more inefficient as the team grew. So I think that was sort of like one mistake. We sort of spent a lot on management overhead. Had a lot of people involved in product decisions. I think one of the other mistakes is sort of like a cultural mistake that we made, where we sort of had these values that we were telling our team, these are our values, and they actually weren't compatible with how I like to build things. So I think the sort of hired people in for something, and then that actually wasn't how it was. This all sounds very vague, but I'll be more specific. I have a very concrete vision for what Dark is going to be. That's what we're building. And there is like lots of room for people to solve, many of the smaller issues within that, but it really has to fit in with what I'm building. And that's not how everyone likes to work. And that's also not how we were pitching the team on how the company worked. And I think that led to a lot of problems with the team when we had the team.
Well, last question, Paul. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. Can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit?
When I talk to sort of younger entrepreneurs, I tend to ask them a lot of questions, and I tend to really try to understand what it is that they're doing, mostly to see if it's consistent, to see if it's like internally consistent. So, an obvious example is someone who's building a startup that needs a huge amount of money, and they're not in a position to be able to like raise a huge amount of money. I'm usually the person who tells entrepreneurs that like they're really fucking it up. And often I'm the first person to ever tell an entrepreneur that they're really fucking it up. And I think that that's like the value added service that I give to the younger entrepreneurs. Usually it's very helpful for them to hear this. And often what I tell them is like, stop building that consumer product and start building a nice, B2B or something instead. Things that are easier to bring to market and things that are easier to succeed at as a first-time entrepreneur. So I guess what I tell them is very context specific, but it's usually the thing that you're building is much wrong in some way for the attributes that you have as a founder.
Got it. That's interesting advice. Paul, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling me the creation story of Dark.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.